Hi friends! Today I want to take you on a little sketching journey. Drawing outlines and that kind of thing is something I get asked often about how I actually do it, and when I'm drawing my main pieces from a reference photo I always use the grid method with a little bit of freehand thrown in, and I have a couple of live streams showing that process which I'll link as a card up above. And I'm always good to go when I have a reference to work from, but something I'm not entirely confident with is sketching or drawing something from my memory or imagination without actually using a reference. I always have so many different ideas on compositions and different things, mainly involving big cats, because that's what I love, that I want to execute, but I always fall short at actually drawing what's in my imagination. I've become so reliant on using a reference that skills I built by using my imagination ages ago have kind of gone away. So I'm trying to fix that, and I wanted to bring you along for the journey too. Let me start by showing you what's in my pencil case and the sketchbook I'm going to be using for this little journey. I've got this cute little woodland animal pencil case from Paper Chase that a friend bought me for Christmas one year, and until now it's been filled with empty watercolour pans, so now you have a purpose little pencil case. The main things I use for sketching are a Mars Lumograph 2H pencil, a light blue pencil like this Pablo for construction lines, and also a dark purple pencil. I've selected this Arteza one in the shade Amethyst. I also have a Faber-Castell plastic eraser and a colour grip sharpener from Faber-Castell to keep those points pointy. I also like to have a little variety of pencils, so I've got a 3B, 4B and an 8B Mars Lumograph pencil. I've also got a Mars Lumograph Black in 4B, and these ones are a mix of charcoal and graphite and they make super dark marks. I also have this standard HB pencil, and this one is a Caran d'Ache which I got in an Art Snacks box, and this one draws really nice and smoothly. I also have some white pencils for blending and adding highlights, and I've also got a black pencil in here to really hype up contrasts. And I've also got a little tortillon or a paper stump for blending when I'm using graphite and all of these supplies. When I'm sketching, I like to mix my media a little bit, so I also have a selection of pens and fine liners. I have two Faber-Castell Pitt pens. One is a brush nib and the other is a size S, which is this super tiny little bullet nib. I also have this fancy little Winsor & Newton 0.5 fine liner, and finally I have a jelly roll pen in white for highlights and other things. The sketchbook I'm using is one that's been sitting on my shelf unused for years. I don't know why, but I've always passed this guy up in favour for other sketchbooks. Kind of had this thing where I kind of don't use what I consider to be pretty sketchbooks in fear that I kind of ruin their pages in some way with some kind of bad art or something. It's weird, I know, but hey, I decided it's finally time to put this guy to good use. And this sketchbook is from the Tate Gallery in London and designed by Mark Hurld. I thought it was Herald, but it's Hurld. And I don't know what the paper is or anything, or the weight inside, as I've kind of long since lost the info on that, but it's a fairly heavyweight paper, and of course it's in my favourite format of 8-inch square. So let's get to sketching. I want to improve my drawing skills from memory and work without reference, so I decided to check my favourite resource for learning a new skill, which is actually Skillshare. Now, this is not sponsored or anything by them, not being paid for this video. I'm not lucky enough to have a paid sponsorship yet, but Skillshare is genuinely the first and the only place I come to when I want to learn something arty. I do happen to have an affiliate link though, which does give you 2 months free of premium membership, so check the description if you want to learn something arty and new, not necessarily just arty, they do loads of other things as well. And I also have my own course on there teaching you about fur techniques, so you can grab 2 months free and watch my course if that's something you're interested in, and I'll also be adding some new courses over the next month as well. So I searched the term animal anatomy as that's what I'm interested in drawing, and from the list which came up I chose this one called Drawing Animals from Anatomy to Rendering by Jeffrey Jacobs, which when skimming some videos seemed to be the perfect fit for me, so that's one that I went with. I've actually completed the first few lessons on this course, as you could probably see from the first 2 pages in this sketchbook, which basically talked about understanding 3D objects and rotating them in your mind. I drew some cones, spheres and cubes from different angles, and this made it really easy to understand 3D objects. I remember doing this kind of thing in school, but I never really applied it properly to my work. I also watched some lessons on different ways to draw from a reference, which I already knew and wasn't something that I was really interested in since I already draw from references. But I could see how this would be handy if I was a complete beginner and I didn't know like different ways to look at references, like using negative space and turning the image upside down and drawing it that way and that kind of thing. The first lesson I picked up with was looking at the 3D form of a big cat leg and paw. I copied the example on the screen from the drawing that he had, and then I started filling it in with these loops and circles, following the kind of fleshy outline which I'd drawn. This was an exercise to kind of get you used to thinking of things as 3D objects and not just two-dimensional drawings, and it was really useful seeing how the shape and direction of the circles was different in the toes to the actual leg, and seeing kind of how that progresses through the leg. And through doing this exercise and the 3D shape one, I could really start to see how important like a central line is when drawing something, especially something that is pretty symmetrical, like having 2 eyes, ears and that kind of thing. I then watched a lesson called General Animal Anatomy and Proportions, which explained in a very generalised manner about the skeletal and muscular structure of animals and the placement of it in a few examples, as well as sort of dividing an animal's body up into sections. The forequarters, which is the head and the front legs, the midsection, which is the belly and part of the back, and then the hindquarters, which is the back legs and tail if an animal has it. Geoffrey also went on to explain the importance of understanding the skeleton of animals, or to at least know the sort of main components, and I can really see how this is crucial for rendering drawings. Knowing how a skeleton can connect together and the sort of extent as to like which it flexes when an animal moves I can see make for super accurate drawings and for realistic drawings. This is also something which I'm going to study separately, and I really want to try and understand because I really want to put some focus into this. And I'm mainly going to focus on big cats because that's the animal that I really love drawing, and I'm always thinking about different compositions and things to do with that particular group of animals. So right, now let's actually start with some studies without using a reference. The first one I tried was the front view of a big cat's head, and when completing these lessons, by the way, I did my best to just kind of follow the instruction, just the sort of audio function of the lesson rather than looking at the screen and copying what he was doing, and I tried to use my judgment on how the study looked on my paper to kind of make adjustments. This lesson started off with some construction shapes, so I used my blue pencil to draw out a large circle and then a smaller circle to represent the nose and the mouth. I then used my 2H pencil to start adding in and fleshing out the cat shape. I started with the mouth, adding an upside down V before adding in the chin, which was pretty rectangular, and the nose was an upside down triangle on top of a stick which came from the top of the upside down V. For me, this is really easy to kind of visualize things in this kind of way. I don't know about you guys. Geoffrey talked about adding lines from the nose corner from the sort of cheek pouches to find where the eyes should be. These lessons were also pretty quick, and I liked that he didn't dwell too long on one part, which kind of kept the pencil moving and really focused on the key elements and shapes which make up the big cat face, so you didn't kind of get like too bogged down in the details to begin with. To complete the face, a couple of lines were added for the sides of the face, and then there were some triangles and a line at the top of the head for the ears. Once all of the shapes and elements were mapped in shape form, it was then time to start refining and fleshing out some of the finer details and making this basic shape cat look more like an actual cat. I switched to my Arteza pencil to get a more defined outline, and I wanted to keep all of my construction lines in place so I could reference back to this if I ever needed to. That's why it's really handy to use a blue pencil, as it doesn't really show up when you start to add other pencil lines on top, but you can kind of still see them underneath, which is really handy. The lesson continued with adding in and refining details, and I was pretty happy with the outcome of this, not having used a reference, and I think it's actually pretty cat-like. The next lesson was looking at the cat in profile. Again, I started by adding in the basic construction shapes of a circle for the head and a sort of rectangle for the nose and jaw. Switching to my 2H pencil, I started to put down the basic shape outline. A big cat's head tends to look quite angular, so I used some straightish kind of lines to add in the chin and nose areas. I used a small triangle for the nose, added in the forehead, and then used the same method of bringing the sort of construction lines from the nose to add in the position of the eyes, and eventually to position the ears as well. Everything is sort of in a nice sort of straight line from the nose corner at this angle, and it's actually really simple to determine the position of your features, having sort of learnt that everything comes from the nose and kind of up in line with the forehead. That was a really cool kind of thing to learn. I positioned the eye a little bit too high at first, and then I kind of added a further construction line from the edge of the mouth upwards to kind of get the correct placement. The eye at this angle is a really tricky one to try and get your head around, and Jeffrey explained to make a kind of cone where the eye should be, and then kind of angle it somewhat in line with the construction line that you drew from the nose to the forehead. And I just used my knowledge and judgment to kind of get this in right, and he did also explain a little bit about the eye detail and how that kind of looks at this angle, which would come in useful if you wanted to render like something really detailed from this kind of like basic shape structure. But I just wanted that quick sketch, that basic shape structure, just to really kind of get it in my head. The next lesson was my favourite, and that was the 3/4 view. And the lessons started off with a different approach of using a more complex 3D shape as construction, and I must admit this was a little bit complicated and kind of ended up with my cat looking weird. I think I need more practice with drawing different 3D shapes. All I practiced was like a sphere, a cone and a cube. I need practice with like a rhombus or whatever you call it. I don't know names of any other shapes off the top of my head at the moment, but I just need more practice with that. I also need practice with like placing them together and how they kind of interact with each other. That was something some of the beginner lessons of this course taught, like how to kind of add shapes onto one another, and I just need to practice with that a little bit more, I think. I do like the old sphere and cylinder method though. So this was actually by far the best lesson yet, and I got to use that central line thing and looked at the symmetry of the face. I also think that this was my best big cat without reference. The central line was really useful in this perspective. I think without that would have ended up with a kind of wonky face. And I used the previous methods of construction lines from the nose to find the eye placement, and then from the eyes I could use more lines for ear placement. I felt pretty confident with my abilities at this stage and got used to using the different shapes and angled lines to create a quick concept. The next lesson I looked at was a domestic or small cat from the front, and this was almost the same as the big cat lesson. I just used smaller shapes and different positioning of them at the very beginning. Small cats have like smaller, higher muzzles than big cats, so the small circle was kind of downsized and shifted up a little. And Jeffrey did a really great job at explaining the subtle and large differences between drawing both large and small cats. The construction and positioning of features was fairly similar, but the detailing was where the differences began. Small cats have sort of larger ears and eyes in comparison to their head, and a softer, rounder jaw. The eyes are also slightly more tilted than the big cat counterparts, and after this lesson I felt pretty confident that I knew the different methods to accurately sketch two different animals, although they're kind of similar, but they're different. My final lesson in this journey today was drawing a big cat in a full body side profile. I've never drawn a full body big cat, even from reference, so I was really looking forward to this one. This lesson started off with one circle to represent the rib cage and to also represent the forequarters, as I learned in previous lessons. From here I added in the leg. I drew a line sort of halfway through the rib cage and also around the shoulder before adding in the foot and the leg. This sketch was aimed to be like a big cat walking, so the foot kind of came out at an angle slightly. Again, for the body, a big cat is quite angular, so I used straight lines to map in the simple outline. A crucial step in this was Jeffrey explaining where the elbow of the cat should be, and I placed it just at the bottom of the rib cage, or the construction circle that I drew. The second foreleg came at the back of the rib cage, and I drew a construction line at an angle coming from the shoulder blade of the first leg, so I can kind of get them sort of coming from the same point, so that's really important. One part I really enjoyed about the legs and this section was actually drawing the feet. They're so simple, and the previous exercise of the leg with the circles in it really helped me construct this. Feet and like the toes of cats and just feet and hands of things in general can be really daunting, but having done that previous exercise with the circles, I could see kind of how the kind of leg would form from those toes. Next came the neck and the head, and for this Jeffrey explained to use the small circle and then use the methods of the cat in profile lesson to fill in the details here, which is what I did. Jeffrey then explained the belly and the back and how the curves of both should be, and that sometimes exaggerating the curves and lines can depict the animal more clearly, or like convey it a lot better. I didn't really exaggerate mine all that much, and I just kind of followed the curvature of the ribcage circle which I drew to begin with. There was a chance here to also really elongate the cat, but I used a little bit of knowledge and scooped the belly up where the ribcage circle ended, and then almost immediately kind of sloped it back down again, so you just kind of got this kind of really soft U shape. The rear quarters were rendered in a similar way to the fore quarters. I used a small line to see where the bottom of each foot should be. This is something that I always used to struggle with. I never used to do this, but using like just drawing a line from the front feet and kind of all the way along to where the back feet would be gets them in the same line, which makes your legs the same size. And big cats have these really long feet at the back and look a lot different to the front, so I kept that in mind when drawing the back legs. As for construction shapes, an oval was used to kind of map in the back leg which is in the front of the foreground. This was kind of at a sloped angle to the back and at a similar angle to the front leg which was coming forward, so try to kind of match those angles so it kind of looked a little bit symmetrical. The other leg at the back was almost in line with where the hips would be, almost coming straight down, so I just kind of added in like a little bit of a line down there and then just shaped in the leg. And the tail followed the curvature of the back and coming off of the back leg, so that kind of oval for the back leg coming at a slight angle, kind of followed that line and drew the tail coming down that and then almost dropping on the floor with a little tiny flick at the end of the tail. With all of my basic shapes and lines in place, I then tidied them up a little bit and tried to really pronounce certain areas by using weight of line, just kind of exaggerating the shoulder blades a little bit, the scoop of the belly, and just adding a little bit of weight of line to some of the back legs and to the head as well, just to really pronounce some features. And I was really happy with how this one looked. I was really impressed with this study and pretty much all of my studies overall. I had so much fun drawing these without reference and just relying on my knowledge of how the animal looked and the guidance given by Jeffrey in this course. There are loads of other animals I've yet to draw in a similar fashion from this course on Skillshare, and I'd love to know if this is something that you guys are interested in seeing more of. This is a skill I'm really passionate about developing, and it's one that I think would benefit a lot of you guys too. Drawing is an absolute fundamental, and pretty much anyone can draw like or copy from a reference photo, just either method like tracing, grid or freehanding, but I really do think that it's a whole different skill to be able to render something from your imagination, especially something that you're trying to like draw realistically as well. I often have like little sketching sessions drawing freehand, as you can probably see from the footage showing a few studies from other sketchbooks which I've done, but let me know if this is something that you would be interested in seeing more of, because I really want to document this process. Also, definitely check out Skillshare if you want to to pick up a new skill. And if you want to follow this course and learn to render animals and brush up on your animal anatomy, then check out Jeffrey's course as well. I'll leave a link in the description for you guys. Don't forget to check out my own course too. As I said, I'll be adding a few others to my teacher profile in the next month, so you could access Jeffrey's course and my courses all for free for 2 months by using my link in the description below. That's all from me today. I really hope that you enjoyed seeing my little sketching process, and I hope you learned a little something from today's video too. If you're new here, make sure you hit that subscribe button and tick that bell so you don't miss any of my future videos. I upload every single Friday for you guys. Happy drawing, and I'll see you next week. Bye.